The laughter from the Anderson family estate echoed into the garden, where the perfectly trimmed hedges stood as stiff as the expectations placed on every member of the family. Inside, the marble floors and chandelier lighting set the scene for another one of Michael Anderson's grand celebrations. Here's to Anderson Corp's upcoming merger. Michael raised his glass with an arrogance that was as polished as his Oxford shoes. His father, Richard Anderson, the CEO and patriarch of the family, clapped him on the back proudly. "Your vision is finally coming through, son," Richard said with a smile reserved only for Michael. "That's how you make legacy moves. Unlike others who waste time playing entrepreneur on their laptops." The chuckles from the board members and cousins seated around the room were not subtle. Their eyes flicked toward the corner where I sat quietly, sipping sparkling water. I didn't flinch. I never did. To them, I was Sarah Anderson, Richard's only daughter, the family embarrassment, the one who walked away from a guaranteed executive track to build something on her own. In their eyes, I was wasting my Ivy League degree working on tech stuff they never bothered to understand. They had no idea I owned one of the fastest growing cybersecurity firms in the country, and I planned to keep it that way. I stood up and gently cleared my throat. "Congratulations, Michael. I'm sure the merger will be interesting." He gave a smirk. "Well, not everyone can lead, Sarah. Some of us are built for boardrooms, not coffee shops and freelance gigs." The room roared with laughter. They didn't know that their upcoming merger deal involved a silent acquisition. They didn't know that the investor group buying them out had one name behind it, mine. But timing was everything. When I left Anderson Corp 4 years ago, it wasn't because I lacked ambition. It was because I saw too clearly what kind of company my father ran: bureaucratic, outdated, and resistant to innovation. I tried to suggest updates to the company's aging digital infrastructure. My ideas were ignored. Michael once laughed. "We don't need cybersecurity training videos from someone who's never even led a team." So I resigned. They all assumed I failed, that I had gone off to build an app that never launched or joined some startup that fizzled. In truth, I had moved to Austin and built Sentinel Wave, a stealth mode cybersecurity firm. I worked day and night from a one-bedroom apartment until I secured my first major client, an international investment bank. The second client came 6 weeks later. By the end of year 2, I had 3 Fortune 500 clients, a remote team of 45, and millions in secured federal contracts. I kept everything quiet. No LinkedIn posts, no family updates, no traceable connection between me and the parent company that would soon own Anderson Corp, because the truth was, I didn't want validation, I wanted impact. And when I got the call from the CEO of Halverson Equity, one of my clients and a key player in Anderson Corp's upcoming merger, I saw my opportunity. "I want to offer you the chance to be the sole funder behind this buyout," he had said. "Anonymous, if you'd prefer." I didn't even pause. That evening after the celebration, I sat on the balcony of my townhouse, overlooking the city skyline. My assistant, Julia, texted the final confirmation. "Julia, all legal docs signed. Acquisition final. You're the new owner of Anderson Corp under Wave Equity. Congratulations, boss. Me. Good. Set the board meeting for next Friday. Full attendance." Julia, "Even the Andersons?" Me, "Especially the Andersons." I arrived at the boardroom 10 minutes early. The table was lined with executives, shareholders, and of course my father and Michael. Richard's brow was furrowed as he scrolled through his phone. Michael, pacing near the whiteboard, seemed rattled. "Something wrong?" I asked smoothly as I walked in. They both looked up. "You're not supposed to be here," Michael snapped. "This is an executive-level meeting for Anderson Corp stakeholders." I smiled. "Oh, I'm well aware." The boardroom doors opened again, and in walked Mr. Halverson from Halverson Equity. The room quieted. "Shall we get started?" he said, nodding to me. "Miss Anderson, the floor is yours." Dead silence. Michael froze. "Wait, what?" Richard's face turned pale. I walked to the head of the table and placed my laptop down. "As of last night, Wave Equity, owned entirely by me, finalized the acquisition of Anderson Corp. Effective immediately, I will be serving as CEO." Michael looked like he'd been punched. "No, that's not possible. You don't have the experience." I glanced at him. "You're right. I only built a $700 million cybersecurity empire that protects the very firms funding your outdated business model, and you're firing me?" he said, jaw clenched. "No," I said, calm and measured. "I'm demoting you to tech support." Maybe now you'll understand the value of people who work on their laptops. The room erupted not in laughter this time, but stunned silence. I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth spoke loudly enough. By the time I hit 24, my brother Michael had already made it clear. I was the family's disappointment. While he strutted around in tailored suits working for Anderson Corp, my parents' prestigious consulting company, I was working from coffee shops, as they mocked. To them, clicking away on a laptop meant I wasn't serious about life. They never bothered to ask what I was building. They never asked how I paid my own bills without ever asking for a dime. In truth, I was building CipherShade, a cybersecurity firm that started with a single client I'd saved from a brutal ransomware attack. Word of mouth did its job. One client became 5, 5 became 30, and within 3 years, I had built a tight-knit team of anonymous white-hat engineers working across 3 continents. But to my family, I was still just Sarah with the laptop. One Christmas, Michael brought his new fiancée to the family dinner. She was a sleek, sharp woman who worked in corporate law. Over roast lamb and Pinot Noir, Michael laughed. Sarah's still doing that freelance tech thing, right? Or is it yoga now? Laughter followed. My parents chuckled politely. Even my Uncle Tom added, maybe she'll code us a Christmas tree next year. I smiled back, not a flicker of reaction on my face. But inside, I filed it all away. What they didn't know was that CipherShade had just landed a silent acquisition deal with a European cybersecurity firm, pushing our valuation to over $450 million. The final signature had come through an hour before dinner. Meanwhile, at Anderson Corp, cracks were starting to show. I kept an eye on them, not emotionally, but professionally. Their outdated security infrastructure was becoming a liability, and I knew from inside sources that they'd suffered 2 minor breaches in 6 months. Nothing major, yet. I considered offering help once, anonymously. My pitch was ignored. Michael probably trashed it. I let it go. Why save someone who wouldn't have lifted a finger for me? Over the next 2 years, CipherShade took on clients in the defense sector, then finance, then healthcare. By my 29th birthday, I was quietly managing deals exceeding $50 million annually. My name wasn't on anything. I preferred it that way. My team referred to me as the Ghost CEO. I like that. T home, the image held. To my family, I was still the underachiever, polite, quiet, doing her own thing. My mother even introduced me at a wedding once with, "This is Sarah. She works online." They never asked what online meant, never thought to look deeper. It stung at first, I won't lie. But over time, I realized their dismissal was my freedom. They never saw me coming. The turning point came with an emergency call. It was from an old family friend, Mr. Langford, who'd worked at Anderson Corp for decades. He'd been discreetly let go after a security breach. They needed a miracle. Their data had been compromised, their clients spooked, and Michael was scrambling for solutions. "Do you know anyone good in cybersecurity?" Langford had asked. In a strained whisper, "Possibly," I replied with a smile. "Let me make a few calls." Of course, I sent in CipherShade under one of our subsidiaries. We patched their systems in under 72 hours. Michael called the firm's hotline afterward. "You saved our necks," he said. "We need a long-term solution. Would your executive be open to acquisition talks?" My assistant played it cool. "Possibly, but she prefers to meet in person." A date was set. The meeting would be at Anderson Corp's boardroom. Michael had no idea. The Anderson Corp boardroom was the same sterile, overly masculine space I remembered from childhood visits: mahogany table, leather chairs, and a full wall of family portraits. My father, stoic. Michael, beaming in a navy suit. Me, not featured. Perfect. I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore a navy pantsuit, sleek but understated, my hair pulled back in a low bun. No makeup, just presence. My assistant, Lena, followed behind me with a thin briefcase and a knowing smile. She had been with me since the early CipherShade days and understood the significance of this moment better than anyone. As the boardroom began to fill, no one recognized me. The Anderson Corp execs made small talk about quarterly reports and damage control, assuming I was Lena's assistant. One of them, a VP named Carson, handed me his coffee cup and asked for a refill. I didn't flinch. I simply placed the cup in front of him and said, "You'll want to stay sharp for this meeting." A few minutes later, Michael entered, tall, polished, full of performative charm. He glanced at me, didn't blink in recognition, and turned to Lena. "You must be Cypher Shade's representative," he said. Lena gestured to me with a small grin. "Actually, this is Miss Anderson, the founder and CEO." Michael turned. His smirk froze. "You're joking." I shook his hand firmly. "Not even slightly." The room went quiet. And no one laughed. No one moved. "You? Wait. You're Cypher Shade?" "I founded it, yes, 10 years ago. But you work online," he said dumbly. I smiled. "So do most people who make money in 2005. The silence cracked into a rustle of papers as Lena opened the briefcase and passed out a printed portfolio. Cypher Shade's growth chart, global partnerships, revenue milestones. The logo on the header now read, Cypher Shade Holdings Inc., a Phoenix Ventures company. Michael sat down slowly. "You own Phoenix Ventures?" I nodded. "It's my investment vehicle. I built it after Cypher Shade crossed $300 million in revenue. I prefer keeping operations lean and anonymous. But you're my sister." "Exactly," I said, locking eyes with him. "Which is why I sent help without attaching my name." The board glanced nervously at Michael. He was pale, silent. My tone remained neutral. "Your systems are vulnerable. You've ignored over a dozen flags in the past 3 years. You're lucky Langford called when he did." Carson, now cradling his own coffee, cleared his throat. "So, what are your terms for a partnership?" I turned to him. "We're not interested in a partnership. Cypher Shade will be acquiring Anderson Corp. Full buyout. We've already spoken to your largest shareholders. A transition plan is in place." Michael shot up. "You can't just take my company." I raised an eyebrow. "Your company? You inherited it. I built mine." He lunged forward. "You don't know how things work here." Lena handed him the final document. "I do," I said. "And by this time next month, you'll be reporting to my transition lead." Michael flipped through the pages, his voice dropping. "This is a hostile takeover." "No," I corrected. Gently. "It's a strategic acquisition. The board has already approved. You've been bleeding clients for 2 years. You needed a lifeline. I provided one." He slumped into his seat, stunned. I stood. "I'll be giving a keynote presentation to your staff next week. I'd appreciate your cooperation until the transition is complete." I paused before leaving. "And Michael, you'll be retained, but not as president." He looked up, eyes hollow. "You'll start in digital operations. Entry level. It's time you learn how the systems actually work." As I walked out of the building, Lena turned to me and grinned. "That was cold." I shrugged. "That was fair. After a lifetime of being treated like I was less, I didn't want revenge. I wanted results, and I'd just secured them." The first few weeks of transition were turbulent, but not in the way I expected. Most of the Anderson Corp. staff welcomed the acquisition once they realized I wasn't there to gut the company, but to rebuild it. I had no intention of laying off workers. In fact, my team from Cypher Shade began mentoring departments in secure data practices and digital automation, upskilling the employees rather than replacing them. It was Michael who struggled the most. He showed up late on his first day in digital ops, no suit, no tie, no title, just a standard black ID badge, like the rest of the junior staff. I could see the panic behind his eyes as he stepped into the open plan office, where entry-level analysts clicked away at their keyboards, earbuds in, focused and uninterested in hierarchy. His desk had already been assigned. No corner office, no assistant, just a workstation with a monitor, onboarding packet, and his name printed on a plain sticker, Michael Anderson, Junior Analyst. He looked around, bewildered. "You'll be working under Naomi," I told him. "She's one of our best cybersecurity specialists. Learn from her. She's 23, he muttered. "And brilliant," I replied. "Don't underestimate her because she didn't inherit her job." He didn't speak for the rest of the day. Naomi, a whip-smart Nigerian-American MIT grad with a spine of steel, didn't give him an inch. She treated him like any junior hire: firm deadlines, weekly check-ins, and an expectation of humility. He floundered through his first security protocol project, barely passed the second, and finally began asking questions by the third. That was the beginning of the thaw. Meanwhile, I took over as CEO. The first thing I did was remove the family portraits from the boardroom wall. I replaced them with a living wall of plants, fresh, clean, symbolic. Anderson Corp, now rebranded Andershade Technologies, would no longer be a monument to nepotism. It would be a place where competence, not lineage, drove decisions. The press was brutal for Michael. Headlines read, Cypher Queen unseats brother in midnight takeover. The sister he ignored just became his boss. Anderson Corp's new CEO isn't who you think. I didn't speak to journalists. I let my results speak instead. We rolled out 3 major platform upgrades in 60 days. Client retention jumped by 18%. For the first time in years, the company stock climbed. And when we landed a $40 million government contract for secure infrastructure, the industry finally took notice. The celebratory dinner. I watched the executives raise glasses to the comeback of the decade. Michael sat across from me, quiet but attentive. He looked tired, not just physically, but spiritually. He had built his identity around status. Now, he was slowly learning what it meant to build something for real. After dessert, he approached me outside on the balcony. The night air was crisp, and the city lights glittered in silence between us. I was wrong about you, he said. I didn't respond. I assumed you were just not serious, he added, like you were playing at being successful online. You weren't the only one, I replied. He looked down at his hands. Dad would have hated this. I met his eyes. Probably. But I don't need his approval anymore. He nodded slowly. I think I do. That moment cracked something in me. Not sympathy, but maybe understanding. We both grew up under the same expectations, I said. You were just taught you had to dominate. I was taught to disappear. He winced. You're not a failure, Michael. But if you want to rebuild, start by listening. He nodded. Okay. For the first time in years, we shook hands, not as siblings battling for a crown, but as professionals, unequal still, but maybe not adversaries. Back at home that night, I sat in my living room with Lena, a glass of wine in hand. So she said, raising her glass, you burned the house down and built a smarter one. No, I corrected. I just finally moved into the one I'd already built. 6 months had passed since the takeover. Anderson Corp was no more, at least not a name. Andershade Technologies had secured its place in the modern market as a leader in digital risk solutions. Our new slogan, built from shadow, designed for light. But what truly mattered wasn't the press or profit. It was the people inside the company. The ones who stayed, the ones who grew, the ones who finally saw a future here. The quarterly town hall. I stood on stage in front of 400 employees, with another 1,200 streaming virtually. I wore no flashy suit, no designer heels, just a sleek black dress and my cipher shade pin on the lapel. My symbol, my journey. I took a breath and addressed the room. When I was 15, my father told me Anderson Corp was a kingdom, and only heirs wore crowns. What he didn't realize is that the future doesn't belong to those who inherit empires. It belongs to those who build them. There was silence, then thunderous applause. Afterward, I met with Lena in my private office. She was running our international expansion, now spearheading partnerships in Asia and Eastern Europe. Her work ethic had always impressed me, but her loyalty, that had changed everything. You know, she said, sipping tea, you could write a book about this. I smirked. Too soon, still rewriting the ending. Just then, a knock. Michael entered, looking like a different man. His suit was modest, but well-fitted. His posture was humbler, more grounded. He carried a folder. I finished the compliance audit for the Singapore team, he said, setting it on my desk. Thanks, I replied, nodding. He hesitated. Also, I've been thinking about re-enrolling in grad school, part-time, cyber law. I blinked, surprised. Really? He nodded. I want to do this right, not just stay in the system, actually earn my place. It wasn't a redemption arc, not yet, but it was a start. Good, I said. Naomi will be thrilled. As he left, I looked around my office. It had once belonged to my father, then Michael, now me. But I had stripped it of the old wood paneling and replaced it with tempered glass and concrete. Clean, strong, transparent, no shadows to hide in. A few weeks later, we hosted a leadership gala at the same venue where my family once held shareholder meetings. Except now, the guest list wasn't filled with cronies and distant cousins. It was innovators, founders, women who were once told they were too much or not enough. Midway through the evening, a former Anderson Corp board member approached me, white-haired, skeptical, a man who had once tried to block my father's expansion plans. You're not what I expected, he said. I rarely am, I replied. He chuckled. You're changing everything. I smiled. That's the idea. After the event, I walked out onto the rooftop alone. The skyline glittered beneath me, each light a reminder of how far I'd come. I thought about all the moments I was dismissed, overlooked, told to stay in my lane. And yet, here I was. I didn't need anyone's permission anymore. I didn't want revenge for the past. I wanted ownership of the future. Behind me, the sign on the building glowed with pride, Andershade Technologies, and below it, in silver script, founded by Sophie Anderson, me name, my company, my rules. I had taken back what was mine, and in doing so, I had rewritten the rules for every woman after me, not the assistant, not the backup plan, not the forgotten daughter, the architect, the queen.